The acacia thorn pierces through Kesi's calloused palm as she grips the branch, her knuckles white with desperation. Blood trickles down her wrist, but she doesn't dare move. 30 feet below, the massive saber-toothed cat circles the base of the tree, its amber eyes locked onto her trembling form. The predator's shoulders ripple with muscle beneath its tawny coat, each breath producing a low rumble that vibrates through the African savanna air. This is no ordinary day for our early human ancestor. This is survival in its most primal form, where a single mistake means death, and every heartbeat could be her last. The sun beats down mercilessly on the East African landscape 3 million years ago, painting the grasslands in shades of gold and amber. Kesi's small band of Australopithecus afarensis had been foraging for tubers and fallen fruits when the ambush predator emerged from the tall grass like a nightmare made flesh. Her companions scattered in every direction, their terrified calls echoing across the plain as they sought refuge in whatever shelter they could find. But Kesi wasn't fast enough. The predator had singled her out, and now she clings to this thorny sanctuary, her primitive mind racing through options that don't exist. The saber-tooth below her is no patient hunter. It's a killing machine perfectly designed by millions of years of evolution to bring down prey much larger than herself. Its canine teeth, longer than human fingers, glint menacingly in the afternoon sun. These weapons weren't just for show. They were surgical instruments of death, capable of delivering a killing bite that could sever major blood vessels or puncture vital organs with devastating precision. The cat's muscular build speaks to explosive power, the kind that could launch its 400-pound frame 15 feet into the air if it chose to leap. As Kesi watches in horror, the predator begins to pace beneath her tree, its massive paws leaving deep impressions in the red earth. Each step is deliberate, calculated, as if the beast knows that time is on its side. The afternoon heat will soon give way to the cooler evening hours, and with them will come fatigue, thirst, and the inevitable weakening of her grip. The cat has hunted before. It understands that prey trapped in trees eventually must come down. But what the saber-tooth doesn't realize is that it's facing something unprecedented in the history of life on Earth. Kesi represents the emergence of a new kind of survivor, one whose greatest weapon isn't claws or fangs, but something far more dangerous: intelligence paired with social cooperation. Her brain, though small compared to modern humans, contains the spark of innovation that will eventually dominate every ecosystem on the planet. Right now, however, that intelligence is focused on one simple goal: staying alive long enough to see another sunset. The sound reaches her ears first, a series of sharp staccato calls that make her heart leap with hope. Through the shimmering heat waves, she spots movement in the distance. Dark shapes emerge from behind a cluster of fever trees, moving with purpose across the savanna. Her family group hasn't abandoned her. They're coming back, armed with the crude tools that have become humanity's first great equalizer in the endless war against extinction. Leading the rescue party is Django, an older male whose scarred hands tell the story of countless encounters with predators and rival groups. In his grip, he carries a branch nearly as thick as his arm, its end sharpened to a crude point through patient scraping against rough stones. Behind him, 3 other adults brandish similar weapons, not sophisticated by any measure but deadly enough to command respect from any predator that isn't desperate with hunger. They move in formation, their footsteps synchronized in a way that speaks to deep social bonds forged through shared survival. The saber-tooth's ears twitch at the approaching sounds, its attention dividing between the prey above and the potential threat advancing across the plain. This moment represents a crucial turning point in the evolutionary arms race between predators and prey. For millions of years, raw physical power had been the ultimate arbiter of survival. Teeth, claws, speed, and strength determined who lived and who died in the brutal mathematics of nature. But now something new has entered the equation: cooperation, planning, and the ability to extend natural capabilities through tools. Django raises his makeshift spear above his head and releases a guttural war cry that echoes across the savanna. The sound is primal, terrifying in its raw emotion, carrying within it the accumulated fury of a species that refuses to be prey. His companions join the chorus, their voices creating a cacophony of defiance that sends nearby antelope bounding away in alarm. This isn't just noise. It's psychological warfare designed to project strength and unity in the face of a superior physical opponent. The great cat turns to face this new challenge, its lips pulling back to reveal those legendary canine teeth. A low growl builds in its throat, warning the approaching humans that it has no intention of surrendering its cornered prey. The standoff that follows will determine not just Kesi's fate, but represent a pivotal moment in the story of human survival. Will intelligence and cooperation prove superior to raw predatory power, or will the ancient laws of fang and claw prevail once again? Django doesn't hesitate. With a coordinated signal that his companions understand instinctively, he launches his assault. The spear flies through the air with surprising accuracy, its sharpened point striking the predator in the shoulder. The wound isn't fatal. Their primitive weapons lack the precision for that, but it's enough to cause real pain and confusion. The saber-tooth roars in fury and surprise, spinning to locate this new source of attack, and in that moment of distraction, the other humans press their advantage. They don't attack directly, that would be suicide against such a formidable opponent. Instead, they employ tactics that would make any military strategist proud. They spread out, forcing the predator to divide its attention between multiple threats. They use their superior mobility to dart in and out of striking range, landing minor wounds while avoiding the cat's devastating counterattacks. Most importantly, they maintain constant vocal communication, coordinating their movements with a sophistication that no other species on Earth had yet achieved. The battle is violent, chaotic, and terrifying. The saber-tooth's claws rake across one attacker's chest, leaving deep gashes that will become infected scars if he survives long enough. Another human stumbles and nearly falls within range of those deadly fangs, saved only by a desperate thrust from his companion's spear. But gradually, incrementally, the tide begins to turn. The predator, accustomed to hunting alone and striking with overwhelming force, finds itself overwhelmed by the coordinated assault of multiple opponents, working in perfect synchronization. Blood streams from a dozen minor wounds as the great cat realizes it's fighting a losing battle. These aren't the scattered, panicked prey animals it normally hunts. These creatures think, plan, and adapt their strategies in real time. When it focuses on one attacker, the others move to flank it. When it charges, they scatter and regroup with supernatural coordination. Most unsettling of all, they show no signs of breaking and running, the response it expects from prey animals facing certain death. With a final, frustrated roar that seems to shake the very ground, the saber-tooth makes a tactical retreat. It doesn't flee in panic, but withdraws with the dignified patience of a predator that will wait for a better opportunity. The humans maintain their formation until the great cat disappears into the tall grass, their weapons still raised and ready for another assault. Only when they're certain the immediate threat has passed do they turn their attention to their trapped companion. Kesi's descent from the acacia tree is awkward and painful, her muscles cramped from hours of desperate clinging. But when her feet finally touch solid ground, she's embraced by arms that represent something far more precious than individual survival, the emergence of true community among early humans. These bonds, forged in the crucible of shared danger, would prove to be humanity's greatest evolutionary advantage. No other species had ever developed such sophisticated social structures, such willingness to risk individual lives for the benefit of the group. As the small band tends to their wounds and shares the meager food they've gathered, the African sunset paints the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red. The day's drama is ending, but the larger story of human survival is just beginning. What they experience today, the coordination, the tool use, the willingness to fight rather than flee, represents the emergence of traits that will eventually carry their descendants to every corner of the planet. But for now they're simply grateful to have lived through another day in a world designed to kill them. The night brings new challenges. As darkness settles over the savannah, different predators emerge to claim their hunting grounds. Hyenas cackle in the distance, their bone-crushing jaws capable of destroying what saber-toothed cats merely wound. Leopards move through the shadows like liquid death, their spotted coats providing perfect camouflage among the dappled moonlight filtering through acacia branches. Most terrifying of all are the crocodiles that lurk in every water source, prehistoric monsters whose killing techniques haven't changed in millions of years because they achieved perfection long before mammals even existed. But Kesi's group has learned to turn darkness from enemy to ally. They've mastered the greatest discovery in human history, the control of fire. The flickering flames that dance in their carefully constructed hearth don't just provide warmth and light. They create a barrier that few predators will cross. Fire represents humanity's first true technological triumph, the moment when our ancestors began actively reshaping their environment rather than simply adapting to it. The knowledge of how to create, maintain, and transport fire would prove more valuable than any natural weapon evolution could provide. Gathered around their protective flames, the group engages in another uniquely human behavior: storytelling. Through a combination of gestures, primitive vocalizations, and shared experience, they relive the day's events. Django demonstrates how he threw his spear, while others mime the saber-toothed's retreat. This isn't mere entertainment, it's education, strategy session, and social bonding all combined into one vital activity. Each retelling refines their understanding of what worked and what didn't, preparing them for the inevitable next encounter with predators. The stories also serve a deeper purpose. They encode survival knowledge in memorable form, allowing critical information to pass from one generation to the next. Young members of the group watch with rapt attention as adults demonstrate hunting techniques, predator behavior patterns, and escape strategies. This transfer of accumulated wisdom represents another evolutionary breakthrough that would eventually separate humans from all other species. While animals could only pass on genetic information through reproduction, humans had discovered how to pass on learned behaviors through culture. As the fire burns lower and the group prepares for sleep, they arrange themselves in a defensive formation that maximizes security while maintaining warmth. Adults position themselves on the perimeter, while the young and vulnerable occupy the protected center. Even in rest, they remain alert for the subtle signs that might warn of approaching danger: the sudden silence of night insects, the nervous movement of nearby herbivores, the barely audible sound of padded feet moving through dry grass. The sleep of early humans was never truly peaceful. Their brains remained partially active even during rest, ready to jolt into full consciousness at the first sign of threat. This hyper-vigilant state would eventually evolve into the complex dream patterns of modern humans, but its original purpose was pure survival. In a world where relaxing one's guard for even a moment could mean death, the luxury of deep, untroubled sleep was a risk few could afford. Dawn arrives with a symphony of sound that would be beautiful if it weren't so dangerous. Birds call territorial challenges from hidden perches, while primates chatter warnings about nocturnal hunters still moving through the forest. The very air seems to vibrate with the presence of countless life forms, each pursuing their own desperate strategies for survival in an unforgiving world. For Kesi's group, sunrise means the beginning of another day-long struggle to find food, avoid predators, and stay alive long enough to see another sunset. Their morning routine begins with careful observation. Before leaving the safety of their night camp, scouts venture short distances to assess the surrounding area for signs of danger. They read the landscape like a book, interpreting tracks in the mud, analyzing scat to determine what predators passed during the night, and noting the behavior of other animals that might serve as early warning systems. This systematic approach to environmental assessment would eventually evolve into the scientific method, but its origins lie in the simple need to avoid being eaten. The search for breakfast leads them across terrain that shifts constantly between opportunity and threat. A grove of fruit trees might provide essential nutrients, but it could also conceal ambush predators waiting for unwary foragers. A waterhole offers life-sustaining liquid, but it also attracts every dangerous creature in the region. Each decision requires careful calculation of risks versus rewards, with the understanding that a single mistake could doom the entire group. Their foraging techniques reveal the sophisticated problem-solving abilities that would eventually build civilizations. When faced with nuts too hard to crack with teeth, they discover that striking them with carefully chosen stones produces better results. Observing that certain sticks can extract insects from deep crevices, they begin selecting and modifying tools for specific purposes. These innovations might seem simple, but they represent cognitive leaps that no other species had yet achieved. The discovery of a termite mound sparks intense excitement among the group. These structures contain protein-rich insects that could sustain them for days, but extracting the termites requires both patience and ingenuity. Kesi watches as Django carefully selects a thin branch, strips away its leaves, and inserts it into one of the mound's tunnels. When he withdraws the stick, it's covered with angry termites that provide a nutritious, if acquired, taste meal. This technology, simple as it appears, represents the beginning of humanity's relationship with tools that would eventually send our species to the moon. But even during these peaceful moments of foraging, danger lurks nearby. A rustle in the nearby bushes freezes the entire group in place, their muscles tensed for instant flight or fight. The sound could be nothing more than wind moving through vegetation, or it could be the first indication of approaching death. In their world, paranoia isn't a mental illness, it's a survival requirement. Those ancestors who weren't sufficiently suspicious of unusual sounds didn't live long enough to pass on their genes. The threat materializes in the form of a pack of African wild dogs, their painted coats marking them as some of the most efficient predators on the continent. Unlike the solitary saber-toothed from yesterday, these hunters work in perfect coordination, using sophisticated tactics to bring down prey much larger than themselves. Their stamina is legendary. They can maintain pursuit for miles, wearing down victims through relentless pressure rather than overwhelming force. But Kesi's group has learned from yesterday's encounter. Instead of scattering in panic, they form their defensive formation immediately. Adults move to shield the young while simultaneously preparing their primitive weapons. Their coordination rivals that of the predators they face, and their intelligence gives them advantages that raw instinct cannot match. They understand that running would only trigger the dog's chase response, turning them from curious observers into committed hunters. The standoff that follows is a masterclass in psychological warfare. The humans use their superior height to appear larger and more threatening, while maintaining eye contact that communicates their willingness to fight. They brandish their spears and clubs, making threatening gestures that demonstrate their ability to inflict damage on any attacker. Most importantly, they vocalize continuously, not in panic, but in coordinated displays of aggression that project unity and strength. The wild dogs, accustomed to hunting scattered, frightened prey, find this behavior deeply unsettling. Their pack tactics are designed to exploit fear and confusion, but these potential victims show neither. Instead, they present a united front that promises significant casualties for any predator foolish enough to attack. After several tense minutes of evaluation, the pack leader makes a tactical decision that will become increasingly common as human intelligence spreads across the planet. They withdraw to seek easier prey elsewhere. This encounter illustrates a fundamental shift in the predator-prey relationship that began with early humans. For millions of years, the equation had been simple. Predators attacked, prey fled, or died. But humans introduced a third option, organized resistance that made predation too costly to be worthwhile. This ability to tip the risk-reward calculation in their favor would eventually make humans the most successful species in Earth's history. But its roots lie in moments like this, when small groups of our ancestors chose to stand and fight rather than run and hide. The rest of the day passes in the constant tension that characterizes life for early humans. Every water source requires careful approach and quick retreat. Every potential food source must be weighed against the risk of exposure. Every decision involves multiple calculations about safety, nutrition, and energy expenditure that modern humans make unconsciously, but our ancestors had to consider explicitly. The mental exhaustion of constant vigilance is almost as draining as physical exertion, but there's no alternative in a world where relaxing one's guard means death. As afternoon fades toward evening, the group begins seeking shelter for another night. Their criteria are specific: elevated position for visibility, multiple escape routes in case of attack, proximity to water but not so close as to attract dangerous visitors, and natural barriers that can be enhanced with simple fortifications. Finding a location that meets all these requirements takes time and careful scouting, but the effort invested in choosing a good campsite often determines who lives to see another dawn. The process of preparing their night shelter reveals the collaborative nature of early human society. Tasks are divided according to ability and experience, with older members directing younger ones in techniques perfected through years of survival. Gathering firewood requires knowledge of which materials burn best and longest. Constructing sleeping areas demands understanding of drainage, wind patterns, and defensive positioning. Even the seemingly simple task of preparing food involves complex decisions about cooking methods, preservation, and distribution. Their evening meal consists of roots, fruits, insects, and the occasional piece of meat scavenged from predator kills, a diet that would challenge modern stomachs, but provided our ancestors with the energy needed for their demanding lifestyle. The cooking process itself is a marvel of early technology, using controlled fire to break down tough plant materials, destroy parasites, and extract maximum nutrition from limited resources. The social aspect of shared meals also reinforces group bonds. that prove crucial during moments of crisis. As darkness approaches and the familiar sounds of nocturnal predators begin echoing across the landscape, Kesi's group settles into another night of guarded rest. Their fire crackles reassuringly, its light creating a small island of safety in an ocean of danger. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new predators, and new tests of their developing survival strategies. But tonight, they've earned the right to exist for another 12 hours in a world that seems determined to eliminate them. The story of Kesi and her companions represents just one day in the million-year struggle that shaped human evolution. Every generation faced similar challenges, and only those who developed superior strategies for dealing with predators, environmental hazards, and resource scarcity survived to pass on their genes. The traits that kept our ancestors alive, intelligence, cooperation, tool use, and social organization, would eventually become the foundation for everything humans have achieved. But in those early days, they served one simple purpose: staying alive long enough to see another sunrise in a world of predators that viewed early humans as nothing more than their next meal.